This is the audio description. The video contains interviews with a number of National Park Service employees and other experts connected with Frederick Olmsted National Historic Site. Their names and titles will be read out in the audio description. The video includes a number of historic images of blueprints, maps, and landscape drawings, as well as current video of the building and grounds of Frederick Olmsted National Historic Site. Additional description follows. Text on screen: Cultural Landscape at Frederick Olmsted National Historic Site, Fairsted, Brookline, Massachusetts.
I don't object to the cutting away of certain bramble patches if other brambles are to take their place.
Path through dense shrubbery.
Or anything that will appear spontaneous and not need watering or care.
Woman reads quote from a book. Text on screen: Frederick Olmsted to John Charles Olmsted, 1884.
More mowing or dug ground I object to. Less wildness and disorder I object to.
Sepia-toned photo of an older man with a full white beard, indicated on screen as Frederick Olmsted.
Frederick Olmsted is considered the father of landscape architecture, and he's important because he really helped set the foundation for the profession.
Man interviewed identified on screen as Bob Page, Director, Olmsted Center for Landscape Preservation, National Park Service. Followed by sepia-toned photo of beach and floating dock at North End Beach in Boston. The bathing suits and attire appear to be from the early 1900s.
The philosophical underpinnings of the importance of public space, the value to society, he and others, but he was really the lead force in crafting and creating and defining the field of landscape architecture.
Woman interviewed identified on screen as Lauren Meyer, editor, the Frederick Olmsted Papers Project. During her interview, images of an original blueprint and historic aerial photo of Central Park.
Frederick Olmsted's first landscape architecture project was, of course, Central Park, a project that he did with Calvert Vaux beginning in 1857. Following the work on Central Park, Frederick Olmsted and the successor firms consulted on some 6,000 projects nationwide.
Man interviewed identified on screen as Alan Banks, Supervisory Park Ranger at Frederick Olmsted National Historic Site. Interview includes a historic image of a water feature in Central Park, a map of Central Park from the early 1900s, present-day footage of Yosemite National Park, and the cover of Yosemite and the Mariposa Grove from 1865, written by Olmsted.
Olmsted really started the whole urban park movement. And I think it also established the idea that there was an obligation that government had to provide a place like Central Park. And this really would develop even more so as Olmsted's career continued, and I think one of the really seminal turning points for this idea was when Yosemite in California was set aside as public space, and Olmsted was involved with kind of developing the philosophical underpinnings of why that should be. He wrote a report that is really considered to be kind of a cornerstone for not only the whole conservation movement, but directly to the National Park Service itself.
Black and white image of an ivy-covered home fades into a present-day image of the same building.
Fairsted was Olmsted's home beginning in 1883, and it is where the Olmsted firm came to develop.
Sepia-toned image of a group of men from the late 1800s posing for a photo on the steps and roof of a building entrance. The interview is accompanied by an old map of part of the Boston Park System titled Common of Franklin Park, and modern images of the offices and studio of Olmsted with period pieces including a drafting table, quill, ink, and lamp.
He had had an office with Calvert Vaux in New York, but as work on the Boston Park System developed and his collaboration with H.H. Richardson developed, Olmsted chose to move and relocate here to Brookline and develop this as his home and office.
Following interview is accompanied by historic drawings of the landscape plans for Prospect Park and the U.S. Capitol grounds, script etched into wood reading Olmsted Brothers, Brookline, Mass., and a blueprint for the Fairsted site.
He moved here kind of at the height of his career. He had already designed Central Park, Prospect Park, had expanded his portfolio to include things like the Capitol grounds in Washington, D.C. Though Frederick Olmsted Sr. is the most famous Olmsted, it's actually his sons who are the most prolific. And if you look at the body of work, probably close to 85% of those projects would have been done during that, what they call the Olmsted Brothers era. So what the Olmsteds are doing here is they're living here, this is their home, but their office is creating all these documents that then were basically being sent all across the country and put into 3 dimensions, which I think is a really cool thing.
Man interviewed is identified on screen as J. Newman, Superintendent of Frederick Law Olmsted National Historic Site. Images during the interview include large metal archival drawers, a person flipping through large format historic blueprints, and an NPS employee pulling invasive plants and trimming tree branches.
Here at Fairsted, we maintain an extensive and comprehensive collection of archives. We have over 200,000 plans and photographs. These archives are used extensively for research. We have hundreds of thousands of hits online every month. The plans are used in contemporary times right now for the preservation, restoration, and maintenance and management of Olmsted sites around the country.
Following interview is accompanied by an historic image of the Fairsted building and footage of the cover and various pages and maps in a book titled Fairsted, a cultural landscape report for the Frederick Law Olmsted National Historic Site.
In the 90s, we were just starting to think about cultural landscape reports and what they would include in their content and how they could be used to guide management decisions. And this report really set the bar that would be required and for the importance of scholarly research and a high level of detail to make sound management decisions.
Woman being interviewed identified as Lee Farrow Cook, site manager at Frederick Law Olmsted National Historic Site. Images during the interview show locations around Fairsted, an arched entrance with thick brush, a curved gravel drive lined with dense vegetation, an open lawn with visitors enjoying the view in a pair of Adirondack chairs, stone steps through lush greenery, and a narrow path surrounded by low plants.
The landscape is an intimate example of Olmsted's design principles that you can see in the full range of his parks and landscapes elsewhere. The landscape includes both pastoral and picturesque elements, including the rolling, peaceful south lawn, as well as more rugged and wild areas such as the hollow or the rock garden.
Following interview is accompanied by images of an open expanse of ferns under a broad tree, a lawn surrounded by thick brush, a curving stone-lined path surrounded by dense greenery, an NPS employee planting, and a bench next to a path.
The Fairsted landscape is unusual as a historic landscape because it is very informal in character. And that means that there isn't a lot of clipped vegetation. It has a quality of looking somewhat wild and natural. And therefore, the maintenance of the landscape has to be a little bit more thoughtfully done. So that means careful attention to plant form, to maintain a character that looks very natural.
Following interview is accompanied by images of a winding path through low vegetation, people sitting on the lawn next to the Fairsted building, a sign labeled office with an arrow pointing to the entrance of the building, and a single chair in the corner of a room surrounded by windows.
Visitors should come here because they have a first-hand opportunity to learn about the many achievements of Frederick Law Olmsted and the firm, and to also learn about the many efforts going on both here and across the country to preserve the places they created and to promote the stewardship of those places.
Following interview is accompanied by images of the cover and pages of the Master List of Design Projects of the Olmsted Firm, 1857 to 1979.
We have various ways that you can look up what we call the master list, and this is the firm's own records of the projects they worked on. I still get a big kick out of it because you can hear them in the distance saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe that the firm was involved." In some ways it's revealing not only the work that they did, but also it is explaining that there was actually, these places exist because somebody here was thinking about making them exist.
Text on screen. Special thanks to Alan Banks, Lee Farrow Cook, Lauren Meyer, Jay Newman, and Bob Page. Director, cinematographer, and editor, Vanessa Hartzucker. Producer, Chris Began. Editor and audio describer, Christy Rugg. Music, an oddly formal dance by Blue Dot Sessions. Aurora Borealis by Asher Filero. Archival footage credits. Olmsted Archives, Frederick Law Olmsted National Historic Site. Library of Congress, Prints and Photographs Division. Visit the links in the description below to learn about the Fairsted landscape. Olmsted Center of Landscape Preservation logo. National Park Service logo. Text reads, National Park Service, U.S. Department of the Interior.